The palace of the Scifi Empire was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling rose like a frozen sky, layered with crystal plates that glowed softly in royal colors. The floor was smooth black stone, polished by centuries of obedience. Every sound echoed. Every breath felt watched. Hundreds of eyes followed the lone human as he walked forward. He did not wear armor. He did not carry a weapon. His clothes were plain, dark, and formal by human standards. But to the Scifi nobles they looked thin and fragile. Just like the species inside them, 2 elite guards escorted him, their tall, insect-like forms armed with plasma spears that could melt steel. Yet the human's steps did not slow. He walked at a steady pace, shoulders straight, head held level. What stopped the palace was not his presence. It was the small hand in his. Princess Sha'ari of the Scifi Empire walked beside him, her iridescent skin glowing faintly under the crystal light. Her long crest was unbound, a sign of personal choice, not royal command. Gasps rippled through the court like a shockwave. Nobles leaned forward, generals stiffened, guards tightened their grip on their weapons. At the far end of the hall, upon a throne carved from the shell of an ancient star beast, the alien queen froze. Queen Veilrix had ruled for 300 cycles. She had watched stars burn and species fall. She had ordered wars that erased names from history. Nothing surprised her anymore, until now. Her daughter's hand was clasped in a human's. Time seemed to stop. Even the ambient hum of the palace systems felt quieter, as if the building itself waited. The queen's many eyes focused sharply, her expression unreadable. No one dared to speak. Humans were not enemies. They were not allies either. They were considered minor. A young species, clever but soft, useful for trade, not power, certainly not worthy of standing in the heart of the Scifi throne world, holding the royal heir's hand as if it were natural. The human stopped exactly 10 paces from the throne. He released the princess's hand slowly, respectfully, and stepped half a pace back. Sha'ari did not move away from him. "My queen," one of the high nobles finally whispered, voice shaking. "This is..." "Silence," Queen Veilrix said. Her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of command. The noble bowed immediately, antennae flattening in submission. The queen rose from her throne. That alone was enough to make several beings tremble. She descended the steps with slow, deliberate movements, her long ceremonial mantle trailing behind her. Her gaze never left the human. "You are the human envoy," she said at last. "The one my council debated whether to invite." "Yes," the human replied. His voice was steady. "My name is Elias Grant." No titles, no flowery words, just a name." Some of the court hissed quietly at the disrespect. The queen tilted her head slightly. "You stand unarmed in my palace. You hold my daughter's hand. You show no fear. Explain." Before Elias could speak, Princess Sha'ari stepped forward. "I asked him to come this way," she said. Her voice was clear, strong, and unmistakably her own. "And I asked him to hold my hand." A ripple of shock passed through the room. The queen's eyes flicked to her daughter. "You asked?" "Yes," Sha'ari replied. "He did not take it. He offered it." Silence returned, heavier than before. Queen Veilrix studied Elias again, more carefully this time. He was smaller than her guards, softer than her soldiers, yet there was something solid about him. He stood as if rooted to the floor, not because he could not move, but because he had chosen to stand. "How?" the queen asked slowly. "Does a human earn the trust of a Scifi princess?" Elias inhaled quietly before answering. "By not treating her like a prize." Murmurs spread across the court. That was not the answer they expected. The queen's gaze sharpened. "Explain." Months earlier, far from the palace and far from safety, Princess Sha'ari's diplomatic vessel had been ambushed near a disputed border. Her escort fleet was destroyed. Her ship was crippled, drifting toward a dying star. Human patrol ships found her. At first, the humans did not even know who she was. To them, she was just another survivor. Injured and frightened, trapped in a failing ship, they boarded carefully, spoke softly, and carried her to safety. They gave her medical care without asking questions. They let her recover before demanding explanations. When they learned she was a princess, nothing changed. They did not lock her away. They did not interrogate her. They did not threaten to use her as leverage. They simply asked what she wanted to do. Sha'ari told her mother all of this, her voice steady as she spoke. The court listened in disbelief. They could have gained power, she said. They could have demanded favors. They could have lied to you. They did none of it. Elias spoke again. We returned her as soon as she asked. We only asked for safe passage. One of the generals snapped. A lie. No species acts without gain. Elias turned to face the general, not aggressively, but directly. We gained her trust. The words echoed. Queen Valrix felt something uncomfortable stir within her. Curiosity. Unease. Trust is fragile, she said. And humans are fragile. Elias nodded. Yes, we are. That answer caused another wave of confusion. Then why stand here? The queen asked. Why not hide behind your fleets? Elias looked back at Sha'ari for a brief moment, then returned his gaze to the queen. Because we promised her we would come in peace. And because if we are judged, we prefer to be judged as we are. The queen studied him in silence. She could sense no deception. No hunger for power. No fear, only resolve. Around them, guards shifted uneasily. Some nobles whispered warnings. Others watched with growing interest. The old rules of strength and weakness did not seem to apply. Queen Valrix finally spoke again, her voice low. You understand where you stand, human. One word from me, and you will not leave this hall alive. Yes, Elias said simply. And you still came. Yes. Why? Elias answered without hesitation. Because running would teach my people the wrong lesson. The queen paused. In all her long reign, no conqueror had ever spoken like this. No supplicant either. She looked at her daughter, who stood tall beside the human. Unafraid. Unbroken. For the first time in centuries, Queen Valrix did not know what the next move should be, and the palace remained silent, waiting for her to decide. The silence did not break quickly. It stretched, heavy and uncomfortable, until even the palace guards felt it pressing against their thoughts. Queen Valrix returned to her throne. But she did not sit. She remained standing, her claws resting lightly on the armrests. Her posture tense. Remove the court, she said at last. The command caused immediate unrest. Nobles turned toward one another in shock. Generals hesitated. Clearing the throne hall during a live audience was almost unheard of. Only my inner council stays, the queen added. And the human. And my daughter. One by one, the lesser nobles were escorted out. Their whispers followed them like echoes of fear. When the massive doors finally sealed shut, the palace felt smaller, more dangerous. Only the queen, her closest advisors, several elite guards, Princess Sha'ari, and Elias remained. Queen Valrix studied the human again. You are either very brave, she said, or very foolish. Elias did not respond immediately. He waited, letting her finish. Or, the queen continued, you are hiding something. Elias met her gaze. If I were hiding something, Your Majesty, I would not have brought myself here. One of the counselors clicked his mandibles sharply. Humans are known for deception. Sha'ari turned toward the counselor. They are also known for keeping their word. More than most. The queen raised a claw, silencing further argument. You will speak, she said to Elias, and you will tell us what humanity wants. Elias took a breath. This was the moment he had prepared for. The moment every human planner feared. We want recognition, he said. Not dominance, not tribute, not territory. The council exchanged doubtful looks. Recognition as what? The queen asked. As people, Elias replied. Not tools, not pawns, not a future problem to be managed. A soft, uncomfortable shift rippled through the room. Queen Valrix tilted her head. Many species want that. Few survive long enough to ask. Most species try to take it by force, Elias said. We tried something else. We tried something else. The Queen gestured for him to continue. Elias spoke of humanity's early days among the stars, of first contact gone wrong, of worlds that saw humans as easy labor, expendable soldiers, or convenient buffers between larger empires. He spoke simply, without bitterness, but the meaning was clear. Humanity learned quickly that survival was not just about strength, but about reputation. They learned to be careful, Sha'ari added quietly. Careful with promises. Careful with power. Kruper. Careful with power, Elias nodded. We learned that if we became monsters, we would only survive until a bigger monster arrived. One of the generals scoffed. So you chose weakness. Elias turned to him. We chose control. The word hung in the air. The Queen's eyes narrowed. Control over what? Over ourselves, Elias answered. Queen Velrix leaned back slightly. That answer disturbed her more than threats ever had. A species that could restrain itself was unpredictable. In a way, conquest never was. She turned her gaze to her daughter. You claim they protected you without expectation. Yet they knew who you were eventually. Yes, Sha'ari said. And when they knew, they offered to return me immediately. Offered, the Queen repeated. You could have refused. I could have stayed, Sha'ari said. They would not have stopped me. That stirred fresh unease among the council. One of the advisors hissed. Then they could have used you later. Elias shook his head. We don't collect debts like that. The advisor laughed harshly. Every empire does. We are not an empire, Elias replied. That drew the Queen's full attention. Not yet. Elias did not deny it. Maybe never. The Queen studied him closely. She saw the truth in his posture. Humans did not deny ambition. They feared what it could turn them into. Why come now? She asked. Why risk everything by standing here? Oh, Elias answered honestly. Because the galaxy is changing. Faster than before. He spoke of border wars escalating, of old powers testing limits, of smaller species being crushed between giants. Humanity stood at the edge of becoming something dangerous or something useful. We came to say this, Elias said. If we are pushed, we will fight. Hard. But if we are respected, we will stand between fire and those who cannot. A guard shifted uneasily. The idea of humans choosing to stand between danger and others did not fit existing models of power. Queen Velrix felt something stir again. Deeper now. Not fear. Concern. And if we refuse? She asked. Then nothing changes, Elias said. For now. The Queen's eyes sharpened. For now. Yes, Elias agreed. Because humans learn. That was when the palace alarms screamed. The sound cut through the chamber, sharp and violent. Guards snapped into formation instantly. Red light flashed across the walls. Report, the Queen demanded. A guard activated a display. Unauthorized energy spikes within the palace structure. Internal. Sha'ari's crest flattened in alarm. Inside? Yes, Your Highness, the guard replied. Multiple locations. The Queen's gaze snapped back to Elias. Is this your doing? Elias raised both hands slowly, palms open. No. If this were us, you would already know. Another explosion shook the distant halls, followed by the sound of shouting. Coup, one of the counselors hissed. The outer faction, Queen Velrix's claws dug into the throne. Traitors, now. Of all times, the guard captain spoke urgently. They are moving toward the inner sanctum, toward the princess. Before anyone could issue orders, Elias stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of Sha'ari. Several guards raised their weapons instantly. Stand down, Queen Velrix commanded sharply. The guards hesitated, then obeyed. You would protect her, the Queen said, watching Elias closely. Even now, Elias did not turn around. We already did. The palace shook again. Security lights flickered. Chaos crept closer with every second. Queen Velrix made a decision. Human, she said. If your words are true, then prove them. She gestured sharply. "Help us secure this palace." Elias turned to face her. "With respect, Your Majesty, we already prepared for this possibility." He tapped a small device at his wrist. Far above the throne world, unseen by the palace, human ships that had remained silent suddenly came alive. Not with weapons fire, but with controlled energy fields. Defensive systems activated, sealing sections of the palace, cutting off intruders without destroying the structure. Reports flooded in. Intruders contained. No civilian casualties. Unknown tech. Precise. The Queen watched in stunned silence. "You planned for betrayal," she said slowly. Elias nodded. "Not because we expected it, because we promised her safety." Sha'ari looked at him, eyes shining. For the first time in her reign, Queen Valrix felt something she had not prepared for, hope mixed with fear. And she realized, too late, or perhaps just in time, that humanity was no longer something small standing before her throne. It was something choosing where to stand. The palace shook again. Though this time, it was not from alarms or explosions. It was from the sound of footsteps, rapid, heavy, and deliberate. The outer faction had breached the inner defenses, and the humans could hear them even before the guards did. Sha'ari's crest bristled with tension. She turned to Elias. "They are fast," she said. "Faster than we anticipated." Elias nodded, scanning the massive hallways. They expected chaos. They did not expect order. Order, in this case, was human discipline. Unlike the Zirathi forces, who relied on numbers and intimidation, the humans moved with precision. Every step was measured. Every action calculated. They did not rush. They did not panic. They prepared for resistance and adapted to obstacles without hesitation. Outside, the palace's defensive shields shimmered faintly, blocking energy bursts from the intruders. But the outer faction was clever. They did not try to break the shields directly. They moved through secret passages known only to the palace's original architects. Their goal was not just to capture Sha'ari. They aimed to create panic, weaken the Queen's rule, and prove that the inner sanctum was not impenetrable. The Queen observed silently from her throne platform. Her eyes flicked between the human and her daughter. She saw the calm confidence in Elias, and it unsettled her. She had spent centuries relying on power, intimidation, and fear. Yet here was a human who commanded neither fear nor allegiance, and still the palace seemed safer with him than without him. Elias turned to the Queen. "Your Highness, we need access to the main control hub," he said. "The intruders are too organized for simple force. We need to isolate them." The Queen's multi-lensed eyes widened slightly. "You mean the central systems?" she asked, an edge of disbelief in her tone. "Only the palace's engineers, my most trusted officers, have clearance." Elias met her gaze evenly. "Then we'll need cooperation." The Queen hesitated. Cooperation with a human had always seemed unnecessary. She had armies. She had loyal generals. She had fleets capable of annihilation. Yet, observing him now, she saw that raw power alone would not protect her daughter. The human's strength was different. It was intelligence, restraint, and foresight combined. "Very well," she said, her voice sharp. "But know this. If you fail, there will be consequences." "I understand," Elias replied. Sha'ari's hand found his, gripping tightly. It was not a plea. It was trust. They moved quickly through the palace corridors. Humans and Zirathi soldiers side by side, navigating traps, energy locks, and hidden security measures that the outer faction had intended to exploit. Elias directed the Zirathi guards with calm authority. He did not command them as a superior. He guided them, suggested tactics, and adapted strategies as new threats emerged. At one point, a squad of intruders ambushed them in a narrow corridor. The humans did not panic. They did not throw themselves into reckless attacks. Instead, they used precise, non-lethal measures to disable the attackers. Sha'ari watched, astonished, as humans subdued soldiers larger, stronger, and more heavily armed than themselves. They fight differently, she whispered to Elias. They fight to protect, not to conquer, he said. That changes everything. By the time they reached the central control hub, the outer faction had already planted devices meant to override the palace's defenses. Elias examined the panels, his fingers moving over alien symbols as if they were an extension of himself. Within minutes, he disabled the overrides and rerouted the systems to reinforce palace security. The queen observed this in silence. She had always assumed that only her species could manipulate these controls. Yet a human, soft, fragile, seemingly limited, had done it with ease. Outside, the remaining outer faction forces had begun to realize their advantage had been lost. Panic rippled among their ranks as they found doors locking, corridors redirecting, and reinforcements arriving faster than anticipated. Elias did not pursue them with violence. Instead, he created zones where the intruders were trapped safely, unable to harm the palace or its inhabitants. Every move minimized casualties. Every action preserved life. Sha'ari glanced at the queen. "They don't kill unless necessary," she said quietly. The queen's voice was low, almost a whisper. "Yet they are unstoppable." As the last of the intruders were contained, the palace fell into a tense calm. The humans had not fired a single destructive shot. They had not destroyed property. Yet the outer faction had been neutralized completely. Elias turned to Sha'ari. "Are you safe?" he asked. "I am," she said, her voice steady. The queen finally spoke, her tone measured. "Human, you have proven one thing. You are not weak. You are not easily manipulated. You are capable of thought, action, and restraint. That is uncommon." Elias inclined his head respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The queen studied him for a long moment, her many eyes reflecting curiosity and unease. "And yet," she said, "you could have destroyed us if you chose to. You hold the power, but you do not use it recklessly." "Because we fight to protect," Elias said. "Not to dominate." "Not to dominate." The queen's gaze shifted to her daughter. Sha'ari looked back calmly, holding the human's hand. The gesture was simple, yet it carried weight far beyond either of them. It symbolized trust, alliance, and a new way of thinking that the queen had never encountered. For centuries, the galaxy had judged power as the ability to destroy or control. Strength was measured by fleets, armies, and fear. Yet here, in the heart of the Sirathi Empire, a human had shown that power could be measured differently. By intelligence, foresight, and the willingness to protect life rather than dominate it. "Your daughter," the queen said slowly. "She trusts you." "She has every reason," Elias replied. "And you honor that trust," the queen said. "Even at risk to your own life?" "Yes," he said simply. The queen's hands clenched lightly on the throne's armrests. She had faced countless threats, navigated countless conspiracies, and ruled over species far more numerous and physically powerful than humans. Yet this human, standing calmly beside her daughter, had revealed something she had never truly understood. Strength could take many forms. Sha'ari turned to her mother. "They saved me," she said quietly. "Without expecting anything. They acted because it was the right thing to do." The queen's voice was soft now, almost inaudible. "Then, perhaps I misjudged humans." Elias did not speak. He did not need to. His actions, his restraint, and his clear focus on protection had spoken louder than any words ever could. The queen sat down slowly, her posture rigid but her mind racing. For the first time, she considered a future where humans were not just minor players in the galaxy, but potential allies, beings who could challenge assumptions without aggression, who could act decisively without cruelty, who could inspire loyalty through respect rather than fear. Sha'ari squeezed Elias's hand, a silent signal of gratitude and trust. The queen observed this carefully, noting the subtle shift in her daughter's posture. Sha'ari had always been strong-willed, but now she stood differently, not rebellious, but certain, confident. Supported by a species the queen had once deemed weak. Outside the control hub, The palace systems confirmed that all intruders had been contained. The human ships maintained their protective positions around the capital. Civilians were unharmed. The Queen's Council was shaken, some with relief, some with disbelief, but none could deny the effectiveness of the human strategy. The Queen finally broke the silence. "Human, you have shown skill, intelligence, and discipline. You have acted without recklessness, without greed, without fear. That is rare." Elias bowed slightly. "I act for what is right." Queen Veilrix's gaze swept the hall. "And yet, you wield a power I cannot ignore." "Yes, Your Majesty," Elias said. "But I do not seek to wield it over you or your people." The Queen looked at her daughter again. Sha'ari's hand remained in Elias's, a simple connection that carried profound meaning. Trust. Loyalty. Understanding. For a moment, the weight of centuries pressed on the Queen. Every conquest, every war, every act of control flashed through her mind, and she realized something she had never considered. True strength was not just the ability to destroy, but the ability to choose restraint when destruction was possible. The Queen's voice softened, almost thoughtfully. "Perhaps the galaxy will have to learn a new kind of fear." Elias looked up. "Or respect," he said simply. The Queen's eyes lingered on him. Then slowly, deliberately, she rose. "You have proven your point," she said, "and saved my daughter in doing so. That will not be forgotten." "That," Sha'ari released Elias's hand only slightly, then returned it, as if to reassure both of them that their bond was not broken by words alone. Outside, the palace began to settle. The humans had not only defended it, they had changed the perception of what it meant to be strong, capable, and dangerous. The Queen remained seated for a long moment, her thoughts turning inward. She had ruled by fear, by power, by tradition. Yet here was a species that commanded authority without cruelty, inspired loyalty without threats, and acted decisively without chaos. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. In that moment, the palace, though physically intact, had already shifted. The balance of power, the understanding of strength, and the very concept of what it meant to be a capable species had been challenged. Elias had done more than save a princess. He had demonstrated a new standard of humanity, and the Queen, for the first time, was unsure how to respond, not with armies, not with threats, but with understanding. Sha'ari looked at her mother and then back at Elias. "They fight like we wish we could," she said softly. The Queen nodded slowly, her mind still weighing the implications. "Yes," she admitted. "But unlike us, they stop when the fight is over." And in that quiet acknowledgement, something profound shifted. The palace, the empire, and even the galaxy had glimpsed the potential of humanity. Discipline, courage, intelligence, and restraint all combined in a species that had once been underestimated. For the first time in centuries, the Queen did not feel fully in control, yet she did not feel defeated either. She felt challenged, and she realized that perhaps it was time for the galaxy to be challenged in ways it had never known before. Elias, standing beside Sha'ari, had become the catalyst. Not through weapons, not through conquest, but through choice, wisdom, and unwavering resolve. The Queen understood that the real power of humanity lay not in what they could take, but in what they chose not to take, and the echoes of that choice would ripple far beyond the walls of the palace. The palace was quiet now, but it was not the same quiet as before. The earlier tension had passed, yet a new energy filled the halls, a mix of relief, awe, and uncertainty. Guards returned to their posts, cautiously scanning the corridors. Advisors whispered among themselves, hesitant to speak too loudly. The Queen remained seated on her throne, her eyes fixed on Elias and Sha'ari, who stood together near the center of the hall. "You have proven more than skill or courage," the Queen said, her voice calm but deliberate. "You have shown a kind of wisdom I have rarely seen." Elias inclined his head respectfully. "I did what I believed was right. Nothing more, nothing less." The queen's gaze softened slightly, though it retained its unmistakable intensity. You could have destroyed everything, yet you chose not to. That is not weakness. That is strength, beyond measure. Sha'ari looked at her mother, hope and determination shining in her eyes. Mother, they are not here to conquer. They are here to protect, to build, and to create trust. We can learn from them. The queen studied her daughter closely. Sha'ari had grown so much over the past months, strong, decisive, and unafraid. She had learned that strength was not always measured in fleets or weapons, but in courage, restraint, and the ability to inspire loyalty. The queen felt a quiet pride, tinged with unease, as she realized her daughter's vision of the future might be very different from her own. You speak wisely, my daughter, the queen said. And yet, this is not a time for dreams. The outer faction still lurks. They will recover from their failure, and they will return. Elias met the queen's gaze steadily. Then we will be ready, he said. We did not come to challenge your throne. We came to ensure safety. That includes defending against those who would exploit weakness. The queen considered his words carefully. Humanity's approach was unlike any she had seen. They did not seek power for its own sake. They did not attempt to dominate. They acted with purpose and precision, but always with restraint. This was a species capable of immense destruction. Yet they chose control over chaos. She realized that this was exactly what made them dangerous and invaluable. Very well, the queen said, her tone measured. If what you say is true, then you and your people have earned a place here, not as subjects, but as equals. But know this: trust is fragile. Betrayal can undo what has been built in moments. Elias nodded. We understand. And we accept that responsibility. The queen's eyes swept over the throne hall, taking in her council, her guards, her daughter, and the human standing beside her. She had faced countless threats in her life. Rebellions, invasions, assassinations. But nothing had tested her perspective as this encounter had. She realized that humanity's strength lay not just in their intelligence or skill, but in their ability to act with purpose and honor. Even when unchecked power tempted them, Sha'ari squeezed Elias's hand lightly, and he returned the gesture with a small, respectful nod. In that simple touch, the queen saw something profound. Alliance, trust, and shared understanding. It was a connection that could alter the course of the empire, and perhaps the galaxy itself. We will rebuild, the queen said finally, her voice firm. The outer faction's threat is not gone, but the palace is secure. The galaxy will take note of what has occurred here. Elias's expression was calm. We are prepared to assist in any way necessary. Sha'ari looked up at her mother. This is a new beginning, mother. Not just for humans and Zirathi, but for all who choose cooperation over conquest. The queen considered her daughter's words. Cooperation, a concept she had always respected in theory but rarely trusted in practice. Yet now, seeing the human and his discipline, she realized that cooperation could be a form of power, perhaps stronger than fleets or weapons. She rose from her throne, her presence commanding yet measured. Then let this be a declaration. Humans will be recognized as partners, not subjects. And my daughter's judgment, guided by their actions, will be honored. A murmur spread among the council and guards. Some expressed doubt, others awe, but all recognized the gravity of the decision. Sha'ari turned to Elias, her eyes reflecting relief and pride. You have changed more than my view of humans. You have changed the Queen's view of the galaxy. Elias smiled faintly. We only acted as humans should, carefully, wisely, and with respect. The rest follows naturally. The Queen stepped closer to her daughter and Elias, her multi-lensed eyes observing them both. You have shown me that strength is not always measured in conquest. It is measured in courage, restraint, and loyalty. These are qualities I underestimated. Sha'ari's smile was quiet but radiant. Then perhaps we can shape the future together. Mother. Humans and Scifi, side by side. The queen's gaze lingered on the human. Elias had not sought power, yet he now stood at the center of the Empire's consideration. She realized that humans, by choice, could be more formidable than any army. Their strength was in their discipline, their ability to act decisively without cruelty, and their willingness to protect those who could not protect themselves. "I will trust your judgment, my daughter," the queen said slowly. "And I will trust the human beside you. For now, at least. History will judge if that trust was wise." Elias bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will honor that trust with every action." The queen returned to her throne, her posture still regal but her mind alert. For centuries, she had ruled through power, fear, and strategy. Now, she faced a new paradigm, a species that commanded authority without fear, inspired loyalty without coercion, and acted decisively without destruction. Sha'ari looked at her mother, then at Elias. "The galaxy is changing," she said softly, "and we have a chance to shape it for the better." The queen nodded slowly, considering the possibilities. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had seen countless species wield power recklessly, yet humanity had demonstrated that strength could be wielded differently, controlled, purposeful, and guided by principle. Outside the palace, human ships maintained their protective formations. The outer faction had been contained, but the message was clear. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Their discipline, foresight, and restraint had made them a force that could alter the balance of power across the galaxy without firing a single destructive shot. The queen's thoughts returned to her daughter. Sha'ari had chosen trust, and that choice had changed everything. The bond between human and princess was more than symbolic. It was proof that alliances could be built on respect rather than fear, that strength could come from choice rather than coercion. Elias remained quiet, standing beside Sha'ari, calm and resolute. He had done what was necessary without seeking recognition or reward. The queen recognized that this was the mark of true power. "Human," she said finally, her voice carrying authority tempered with curiosity. "The galaxy will watch you. I will watch you. And history will record your actions here." Elias met her gaze. "Then let it be known that humans act with honor, even when given the chance to dominate. We fight to protect, not to conquer." The queen's eyes lingered on him, then shifted to her daughter. Sha'ari's hand rested lightly on Elias's arm, a gesture of trust that needed no words. The palace was secure, the outer faction neutralized, and a new understanding had been forged. Humanity had not conquered. Humanity had not demanded tribute. Humanity had acted with discipline, foresight, and respect. And in doing so, they had reshaped the perception of power itself. Sha'ari looked at her mother. "We are stronger together, mother. Scifi and humans, side by side. The galaxy will see what we can accomplish." The queen's voice was quiet, almost thoughtful. "Yes, perhaps it is time to learn a new kind of strength. A strength measured not by fear, but by wisdom, courage, and restraint." Elias's expression remained calm, steady, and confident. "Then let us move forward together. The galaxy is wide, and there is much to protect, much to build, and much to learn." The queen nodded slowly. She had ruled for centuries, seen countless species rise and fall, and faced threats she could never have imagined. Yet here was a human, standing beside her daughter, demonstrating a kind of power that could change the galaxy not through conquest, but through choice. Sha'ari squeezed Elias's hand, a silent signal of trust and solidarity. The queen observed this, realizing that her daughter's judgment, guided by this human's actions, had already reshaped the future. For the first time in centuries, Queen Velrix felt uncertain, not fearful, but challenged. The galaxy had shifted in ways she could not yet predict, and the humans had become an undeniable part of that change. And in that quiet moment, standing in the heart of the palace, the queen understood something profound. Humanity's greatest strength lay not in what they could take, but in what they chose not to take. The ripple of that choice would extend far beyond the palace walls, beyond the empire, and into the stars themselves. Elias had come as a single human envoy, unarmed, calm, and resolute. He had saved a princess, protected an empire, and in doing so, altered the very understanding of strength. Queen Veilrix returned to her throne, her mind alive with possibilities. She had faced empires, rebellions, and wars. Yet nothing had taught her so much as this encounter. She had witnessed restraint as power, intelligence as authority, and humanity as a force that could challenge the galaxy without raising a weapon to conquer. Sha'ari looked up at her mother, hope shining in her eyes. "The future is ours to shape." "Mother," she said. The queen's multi-lensed gaze swept over the human beside her daughter. "Yes," she said slowly. "And it is time for the galaxy to learn a new lesson about strength." Elias bowed slightly, his posture calm and unwavering. He had done what he came to do. He had proven that humans were not merely a minor species to be overlooked. They were capable of shaping the galaxy, not through fear or aggression, but through courage, wisdom, and restraint. And the queen, for the first time in her long reign, understood that the galaxy would never be the same again. Humans had arrived not to conquer, but to change everything. And with that, the palace of the Sirathi Empire, once a place of absolute control and tradition, had become the stage for a new era, an era where humanity's quiet strength could inspire hope, respect, and perhaps even a new understanding of what it meant to be truly powerful. The stars outside glimmered as they always had, indifferent yet full of potential. Within them, a single species had shown that true power lay in choice, and that choice had the power to reshape worlds, empires, and destinies alike. Queen Veilrix leaned back in her throne, her thoughts heavy yet clear. The galaxy was changing. Humanity had arrived, and it was time to see what could be built together. Sha'ari's hand rested firmly on Elias's arm. The human looked out toward the palace windows, calm, resolute, ready for whatever the future would bring. And in that quiet, steady moment, the queen realized something she had never believed possible. Humans, fragile and underestimated, had become the cornerstone of the galaxy's next chapter. The palace had been saved, the outer faction had been contained, and the galaxy had witnessed the first act of humanity's quiet, unwavering power. A new era had begun, and it would be defined not by conquest, but by courage, restraint, and the strength of choice. The human and the princess stood together. The queen watched them, understanding that history was watching too. And somewhere deep within her, a thought formed, one she had never allowed herself to think before. Perhaps humanity was not just a rising species. Perhaps humanity was the future. And with that, the palace, the empire, and the galaxy took their first steps into a new era, shaped by the quiet but undeniable power of humans, who chose to act with honor, intelligence, and unwavering courage. The moment had arrived. The galaxy would never forget it. Humans had arrived, and they had changed everything.